Good evening all, and welcome. Is there someone behind you? Oh, silly me. It's just a figment of my imagination. Or is it? Tonight we're delving into the creepy world of stalkers. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I went to a fairly large middle school that had kids from at least 3 cities in the area all going to it. From there, I went to a small high school with maybe 300 kids in total. My high school was a highly competitive charter school located in the mountains and surrounded by several acres of woods. I met this guy, Sam, in middle school, but didn't really interact with him much. It was more of one of those friend of my friends things. Fast forward to my sophomore year of high school. Sam transfers into my high school, and my high school did some block schedules. So we had 4 classes and a sort of study hall / homeroom class in the middle of the day. Sam transferred partway through sophomore year, and I didn't know how this happened, but he ended up in 4 out of my 5 classes, counting homeroom / study hall. At this time, I had established a bit of a reputation at the school for being helpful and a good student. So when Sam transferred and seemed to be having a tough time, I was asked to take him under my wing and help him out. Boy, do I regret doing that. One of the classes we had together was a history class that I also had with one of my best friends. Despite her protests, my teacher made the 2 of us work with Sam on all our group projects. Sam was already kind of creepy with me, even though he has been at our school for less than a week. When we started working together, he would sit uncomfortably close to me, and at first he wouldn't say much, but as he got more and more courage, he began talking to me. At first, it was all normal stuff. I had an older boyfriend at the time who was in the Air Force and stationed in Japan. I know that sounds like one of those lies high school girls make up to get creepy guys to back up, but this was true. We were childhood friends and had began dating shortly before he enlisted, so I made sure Sam knew I wasn't looking for anything more than a friend. But it didn't take long before he started flirting with me. His flirting quickly escalated from compliments to asking if my boyfriend Alex was real, to trying to steal the purity ring I wore every day on my finger, and joking that one day it wouldn't be just the ring he was stealing. I was freaked out, but I figured there wasn't much he could do since we only saw each other at school, and he didn't know where I lived. Back when I was in high school, the chat that's a part of Gmail now called Google Hangouts was like the AIM messenger of the time, so everyone used it, and there were several group chats that I was a part of for my school that used personal email addresses rather than our school Gmails. Through this, Sam got my email address. He started sending me creepy, explicit emails about the things he dreamt about. I won't share the one I have saved, but they were gross, especially to a Christian virgin girl. He often had some part about me moaning how I loved him, not Alex, over and over again. Eventually it got so bad that one of my friends reported what was happening to school administration. They basically sent out an email to the entire school administration that Sam wasn't allowed to communicate with me at school. This freed me from everything but the creepy emails that came in on a weekly basis, at least until the end of the year. Junior year, Sam was keeping his distance, but we had a class together, so we had started interacting at a minimal level. I mostly just ignored him and hung out with my friends though. Senior year is when things started getting really bad again, and I didn't realize how bad they had actually been in my junior year until this point. We both took advanced martial arts as an elective class that year, which meant not only did we have to talk, we actually had to spar and train together. The worst thing about this is that my high school gym was a 3 to 5 minute walk from the rest of our campus, and you had to walk through a trail through the woods that I mentioned earlier to get back there. Sam would wait for me every morning at the top of the trail before school, and at the bottom of the trail after class, just so that he could walk with me. Although he usually walked a good 5 feet behind me and didn't talk to me. At this point, my long-distance relationship was beginning to fall apart, and Sam saw this as his opportunity. He started telling me stuff about how I was his soulmate, and I just didn't want to see it. He also told me that he had drawn some kind of rune that eternally bound our souls. Don't ask me what that means. Sam was into all sorts of Wicca, dreamwalking and other magic stuff that I wrote off as stupid jokes. As we came up on the end of our senior year, some of my teachers started asking me about essays, short stories and poems that I had written and turned in during earlier years. I eventually found out that Sam had been taking my old writing out of the trash at the end of each year when I cleaned out my locker, and thrown out all those old assignments I no longer cared about, and was turning them back in as his own work. I insisted I knew nothing about it, and my school decided to search his locker. The thing was like a crazy shrine to me. He had piles of my old homework and assignments that I had thrown out, and 4 or 5 composition notebooks that I used to keep as diaries and poetry journals that I assumed I had just lost at some point. The school assumed he was simply keeping my work in hopes of turning it back in and getting better grades so that he could actually graduate, but it felt really creepy to me. The school took all of my old work and made me take it home and suggested I not throw out assignments away at school, or I would get into trouble for letting him copy me. The thing is, the other thing they found in his locker that they didn't care about, but I did, was several word magnets that my friend and I had made to leave notes in each other's lockers. I know they were the ones out of my locker, which meant he also knew my combination. A few weeks after they raided his locker, I was getting changed back into my regular clothes after my martial arts class, and discovered that my bra and my extra workout shirt were missing from my locker. I reported it to the school, but nothing ever came of that. I'm fairly sure Sam stole them, but I've never been able to prove it. After that, he stopped talking to me for the most part. I had a new boyfriend who actually went to our school for the last 2 months of senior year, and Sam was terrified of him. The only thing that happened was that one of the composition notebooks I had, completely filled with quotes and poems, went missing, and occasionally the magnets and other things in my locker seemed to magically rearrange themselves in ways that didn't make sense. Some of my friends knew my combination, and although they swore they'd never touch my stuff, I just figured it was them trying to be funny. After graduation, I figured that I was finally free of Sam, but instead, he began to stalk me more closely. At first, it was just emails from accounts I didn't recognize, asking for things that didn't make sense. I marked these as spam and ignored them. Then he made an account under the same name of one of my former friends from high school. I thought it was actually my friend Becca emailing me, so I responded. We carried on a pretty normal email conversation for a few weeks, and then she got weird. She and I had talked about our relationship and things like that, so she knew I had a boyfriend. She started asking me to send her nudes and insisting that if I didn't, she would hurt herself or try to end her life. She used to send me pictures of the deep cuts on her arm, or even counted the pills she took when I refused to do what she asked. Becca had told me she was living somewhere in Colorado, so I was pretty sure I couldn't call anyone and say someone I knew was threatening to do what they were doing. I'm not proud of what I did, or that I fell for Sam's games, but I did what I was told for fear of being responsible for someone's death. This went on for several months until I finally got tired of it and actually deleted my email address. Things were quiet from there as I started my first year of college. However, I soon found out from a friend of mine that Sam was attending the community college, which is within walking distance of the one I was attending. I didn't think Sam knew where I was, so I figured I'd be fine, and I was for about the first month. Sam started showing up outside my classes. At first, he would just stand there in the sea of people leaving my class until he knew I saw him. Then he would walk away. This started to really freak me out, and at the time I had no friends at the college and no boyfriend to intimidate Sam. After a few weeks, I started getting emails to my college email address. They always came from different email addresses and had no subject, and always had 4 attachments. They were always me somewhere on campus, eating, in class, heading to my car, even photos of me heading into the bathroom. I reported everything to campus police, but they told me that unless I could prove who was doing this, there wasn't much they could do about it. I established the habit of getting on and off campus as quickly as possible and not talking or interacting with anyone. After my first semester and Christmas break, things calmed back down for a while, and I started trying to make friends, which turned out to be a big mistake. I had started working in a store in my local mall, and I hadn't heard from Sam or Becca in several months. Sam started showing up at my work that January. I worked in a home decor store, so the store had pretty narrow walkways between the displays, and it was next to impossible to notice someone coming up behind you, and the cameras in half the store were dead. At first, he would just wander around, and if I was working, he might do something, like break something in my section of the store. One of my co-workers actually saw him do it a few times. I worked on a rotating schedule, so I worked different times and different days every week, so he couldn't just wait for me to show up. If he went to the store and I wasn't there, he would ask when I was working, claiming to be my boyfriend. After 2 or 3 times of my managers and co-workers asking me why my boyfriend had come in asking for my schedule, did I find out it was Sam. I explained the situation to my managers, and they let everyone know that if Sam showed up while I was working, they had to alert the manager and me, so that I could stay in the back. They were also told to tell Sam that I no longer worked there, in hopes that he would stop. It took my manager threatening to call mall security for him to finally stop coming to my work. After that, he went quiet again for almost a year, before popping up on my social media again last year. He claimed that he had changed and that he wanted a second chance. Me, being the stupid person that I am, and always wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt, and only seeing the best in people, started to rebuild a friendship with him. At this point, I was actually single, but was trying to build a friendship with this guy that I had a thing for a very long time, who was now my fiancé. It was only a week into us talking before he started being creepy again, and begging for nudes, and sending me messages like the emails he used to send me in high school. my now fiance, then my best friend, although he asked me out within a few weeks of this, signed into my account on Snapchat and basically ranted at this guy, telling him to leave his girlfriend alone, and the next inappropriate message he sent me would mean my boyfriend immediately blocked his account and he would never speak to me again. After that, I tried to put some distance between us, although I tried to be friendly and answer when he talked to me. After a few months of this, Becca made a reappearance. She started talking to me on Instagram as someone completely different. We spoke for a few weeks before she started sending me messages that made it clear it really was Sam. My fiance and I have a theory that Sam decided to bring Becca back as a way to attempt to make me dependent on Sam again. She went back to her old tricks of the self-harm and the threats. Except this time, Sam used the timed photo thing on Instagram and his little sister to really add a punch to it to make me truly believe she was trying to hurt herself. I told her that I knew who she was and that she was lying. She threatened to blackmail me with old images I had sent her way back in my first year of college if I didn't send her more. Instead, I told my boyfriend, and he used his tech nerdiness to check out the metadata on her photos and discovered that they were screenshots from some other account and that this person actually lived in the same state as us. We reported Becca to both Instagram and our local police and spoke to a lawyer friend of mine about the things she said and then blocked both Becca and Sam. The only thing that's happened since then is that a few accounts have popped up on Facebook and whisper using my images, both the appropriate and explicit ones, and claiming to be me. My fiancé has a search algorithm set up to find them, although as soon as one comes up, it's down before either of us get a chance to report it. It doesn't happen consistently, and entire months go by between incidences, but honestly, I wish it would just stop already. Sam, please, leave me alone, and let's never meet again. When I was 13, I moved from my hometown in Tennessee to a whole new place in northern Michigan. There, I met my best friend Lena. Anyway, she's like my twin sister. That's what we call ourselves. Lena has two younger sisters, Katie and Marina. Lena and I had a friend called Bear. We also had a friend who I would later date named Ronnie. Ronnie and Bear knew a girl called Mandy, who is the antagonist of this story. We met Mandy in high school our freshman year. She's 17, we're 14. No big deal. Most of us hang out with older kids anyway. She was a little annoying, but we dealt with it because Bear had a crush on Mandy's older brother. So the stalking wasn't really starting at first. Mainly, she was annoying and tried to tag along with us for everything and was mostly just generally a nuisance. She had a class with Lena and most often would hang out around her before and after. Eventually, Mandy began to crave Lena's attention. She would tug on Lena's hair in class when she was talking to our other friends, be very loud and aggressive towards them when she was told to hold on, and shoved herself into Lena's personal space. She would take pictures of Bear, Ronnie, Lena and I, and anyone else who she knew, and post them all over the internet. Ronnie had explicitly stated that he didn't want pictures of himself on the web, but she posted them anyway. She went as far as to use the pictures she had taken of them without their knowledge and posted them without her consent as her Facebook profile picture. She went to Bear's apartment one day and ended up giving her a ring. Her parents got angry for I can only guess why, and Mandy decided to lie and tell them that Bear had stolen the ring from her. She then told them that Bear had lost it. This got Bear into deeper trouble with Mandy's parents, despite it not being true. They later learned it wasn't the case, as they found out Mandy was stealing money from them constantly. Mandy started getting worse and worse. I confronted her about her physical abuse towards Lena and told her to either leave her alone completely or stop being so irritating, and told her that I would personally kick her if I heard she had been physically harming her again. And for a while, it stopped. She began showing up to places we were going and forcing herself into the group. One very important example of this was a birthday party Lena had. She was turning 15, and it was a cosplay party. She showed up unannounced and uninvited to Lena's home in a Halloween costume, feigning ignorance when we told her she'd not been invited and she wasn't allowed to be at Lena's home. She showed up to Ronnie's house while he was alone, prompted me to get rather angry as she had a crush on him, and she claimed she knew I was dating him at the time. Ronnie told her to leave, and she said he didn't want anything romantic from her at all because he had a girlfriend. She didn't leave until Ronnie's mum came home and threatened to call the police. A fun tidbit about this is that Ronnie had no neighbours for miles. He lived on farmland miles outside of the nearest city. Hell, he lived miles from me, and I was at least 10 minutes from the city. She had to have intentionally showed up, and she was obviously not popping in while in the area. Things seemed to calm down once I moved again. I had long since broken things off with Ronnie, and we remained friends for a good while. I heard less and less about Mandy, until I wondered if anything had even happened. It was finally seemingly over. About a year ago, I was asked by Lena if I remembered Mandy. I told that I did, of course, and I asked why. She then dropped a bomb on me. Lena was a Christian for a while when I knew her. She'd been raised Baptist, and she and her siblings attended a youth group at the church that we had gone to, and I went with them to make them happy despite the fact I'm Jewish. We were all pretty close with the youth pastor and youth leaders, so I was surprised to hear that they'd stopped going weeks prior. You see, Mandy had been waiting every week at the youth group to see Marina, waiting to ask her out. Mandy, who was now 20 years old, was waiting on a weekly basis to see Marina, who was 12, to ask her on a date. A 20-year-old woman was trying desperately to ask out a 12-year-old girl who wasn't really old enough to know if she even liked anyone, let alone if she was gay or bisexual. I was beyond furious. I was seeing red, then messaged Mandy as she was still in my contacts. She became immediately defensive, asking me over and over who told her and why I wanted to know. Now for the past few years I've been studying abnormal psychological forensics and criminology to prepare for college and university when I go. This defensive behavior, especially in Mandy, showed me that she was guilty. I didn't answer past, someone told me and I need to know. Shockingly, she told me the truth, said it was true, but that she was done with it now and she had a boyfriend. This made me feel physically ill. I asked how old he was and she told me he was 16. The worst part about everything is, in my eyes, trying to ask out a 12-year-old girl when she was 20. That is the absolute most sickening thing about it all, and I feel ill just remembering this. Mandy, for your own sake, let's not meet. God only knows what I'd say or do to you if I ever did. In 1988, I quit my job as a teacher in San Francisco and moved back with my parents in East Sacramento, in their guest house. It was a nice little cabin type with a small sitting area near the kitchenette, and the sound of shrubbery near my bedroom was relaxing. During the summer, I was taking a refresher course in alternative teaching methods in a nearby town called Rancho Cordova, and I was there for most hours of the morning from 9 till 12, and I would take the bus home. It was a really nice place to live, and the houses were beautiful. Who wouldn't want to live there? Not me. When I'd walk through Sacramento, I'd imagine walking through the busy streets of the Haight. I had to be there, so I had no other choice, and the teaching job I was doing to have at Folsom Middle School seemed promising. On a sunny afternoon, I walked home from the bus stop and noticed the neighbor's son, at only 10, was sitting on the parents' lawn. I asked him if he was okay, and he looked at me dazed. "There's a man looking in your window," he said. I thought maybe he'd seen my dad, and that was it. I asked him to carry my books while I unlocked the door, and told him it was probably my father. "No, he was looking from the outside," he said, once again thinking he was just a kid with an imagination. "What did he look like?" He said it was a man wearing a black mask like the Hamburglar. This was California, and David had never seen snow, so it's likely he'd never seen a ski mask, and it sounded like that was what he was describing. For a second I considered reporting it, but it was only the basis of a child who said a man who looked like the Hamburglar was looking in my parents' living room window. I let him inside, let him have a soda, and walked him across the street. The rest of the afternoon I sat on the patio of the guest house, smoking cigarettes and reading Stephen King. I lifted my head up to take a sip from my Coke when I saw a shadow duck behind the garden shed. It was almost like at the moment when Annie and Laurie are walking home in Halloween, and the shape hides behind the hedges. Almost like that. Cigarette in hand, I walk over to the garden shed slowly. "David, if that's you, go home." I looked behind and there was no one there, but beside it there were 2 footprints where someone wearing heavy boots was standing. I was freaked, but it could have easily been anybody, even the neighbor. I went inside and put on a record really loud, leaving the window open and sitting back on the patio reading my book. I thought if there was someone creeping about, maybe playing music would scare them to thinking someone was home. A knot was tightening in my stomach, and the more I thought about it, the more I was tempted to look up from my page to see if the shadow would jump out from behind the shed once more. I grew up there and never felt like East Sacramento was a place for prowlers. It seemed too much of a sunshine land for that. I blew the thought off and decided to pick the needle up, turn the stereo off, lock up, and go to an old friend's house until my parents returned home. I went to my cousin Cindy's house. She'd just married her boyfriend straight out of high school. Cindy was a kindred spirit and would go on to marry 4 more times by 1999 before she had her first son. "Call the police, that's what I'd do," she said, rinsing her hair in the sink. She just finished coloring it with food dye. Her husband, Brad, at the time, offered to go over there before he had to go to work at the video store. Brad wasn't butch or strong, but he pretended he was. I felt stupid. A grown-ass adult that was too scared to go home because the bogeyman was hiding in the garden shed. "That place always gave me the creeps. It's dark. There's spiders," Cindy laughed. "But we never thought there was someone in there," I replied to her. I called my mother at her prayer group and she came to pick me up. I felt even more pathetic than I did before. I told her what I'd seen and what David said. She said that I was scaring myself and to not be silly. She laughed, and I thought perhaps she was right. That was until I came home to find the kitchenette window in the guest house had its screen taken off, put neatly against the wall. Nothing had been taken, but things had been moved. Odd things. Some records were pulled slightly off the shelf. A picture of an old friend had been placed face down, and there was an empty beer can in my trash can. I don't drink, and some of the food in my fridge had been eaten. My degree was now on a different hook. Either some jackass broke into my house to move some stuff and have lunch, or I was going crazy. After this, I started getting obscene phone calls like heavy breathing and whispers that I couldn't understand. I asked the police what to do, and they told me to put in new locks on the doors and call my phone company to change my number. When I asked them if there was something they could do, they said they couldn't because I had no evidence these things were related and nothing was stolen. I prepared to move and decided I wasn't going to wait around to be the victim of crime. One afternoon I'd come home from work to hear the phone ringing. I dropped my student's work on the outside chair and quickly unlocked the door, picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" There was nothing. "Hello, anybody there?" They were calling me a whore in this high-pitched whisper. I'd had enough. I moved that weekend in with my cousin Cindy until I could find somewhere else. My parents never experienced the phone calls and never found their things misplaced. For some time I considered it was a student I gave a bad grade, or someone following me home. I'd like to know who it was. It'll eat me alive otherwise. I've gone on long enough without knowing, and maybe I will never know. One night in November of 2017, I was 22 years old. My mum and I went grocery shopping. While standing in the bakery section, my mum and I ran into my aunt, and the three of us stood there and chit-chatted for a while. I'd been feeling generally uneasy around this time because I had recently been binge-watching a lot of YouTube videos about true crime and creepy encounters. I was having trouble sleeping, as I had been getting scared when I was home alone, and heard the tiniest noise. Due to this unease or paranoia, I was very alert and on edge in the bakery at the grocery store. I stood with my back to the bagels and kept an eye on everyone walking past us as my mum and aunt shared stories. Nobody seemed suspicious until I caught the sight of a prematurely balding man. He looked like your average mid-30s, brawny neckbeard nice guy. I remember thinking to myself, God, he's kind of creepy looking, isn't he? As he walked through the produce section in the bakery. But then I started to feel bad. Chill out, you're being way too judgmental, I told myself, going so far as to even smile to him out of sheer guilt. He's probably staring at you because you're staring at him. He's just glancing his way by. He's going to forget about you the second he takes his eye off you. Right? Wrong. I completely forgot about this experience for just a few blissful, ignorant months. Then in January, I received a messenger request from an old friend I'd lost touch with. My long-lost friend was the first of many to reach out, saying there was a lot of buzz on Facebook about a local sex offender who had been taking pictures of young women with hair he deemed pretty, some in their 20s like me, some well below the age of 18, and posting them on a picture-sharing site. I don't know exactly how, but his online albums was stocked with, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of these pictures. He had been found out, and a bunch of screenshots were being plastered all over Facebook to raise awareness. My old friend saw a few pictures of me standing against the bagels flanked by my mother and aunt, my long hair hanging down in post-French braid waves. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the screenshots. I told my family about what I just found out, and my brother immediately called the police to report it. As he was talking to an officer, I received more screenshots, this type of the creep's registry page. He was the man from the grocery store, the man I was initially unnerved by, the man I felt guilty about, the man that I smiled at. When my brother got off the phone with the police, he told us that they had been flooded with reports all night. While sympathetic, the policeman my brother spoke to said there was nothing they could do as the creep was legally within his rights to take those pictures of us out in public. The man was allegedly assaulted outside of a convenience store the night his pictures were discovered, before he even realized he had been exposed, and he has since been arrested for possession of indecent images of children in an unrelated case. Fun fact, my brother had actually been aware of this guy long before, as he was apparently infamous on the net for being a sketchy white dude who was obsessed with Asian women, had a hair fetish, and oh yes, was a convicted offender. So as they say, creepy photographer, let's not meet. When I was still in high school, I was crossing a bridge to go to school, and this very friendly man stopped me and asked me to fill up a survey about budgeting. I was like, okay, sure, and when I was done, he told me to fill out my contact details and gave reasons, like how he's a social worker, and of course I gave him my number. I was so dumb, but at the very least I was smart enough to give him a fake name. In 2016, I began to receive random messages from this guy, and was getting super creeped out by it. He knew which school I went to because I was wearing my uniform then, and was starting to ask personal questions. I tried to avoid them all and generally didn't reply to him, but he kept texting me, albeit infrequently, maybe a message a day. And when he wished me a happy Valentine's Day, I decided enough was enough and blocked him, as I wasn't feeling safe at all. Later that year, we received a police notice calling for witnesses because they arrested a few perverts in the area I was schooling in, as there were multiple girls' secondary schools and tertiary education institutions in that area. In the notice there were several photos, and I saw the very same man, the man who approached me to fill out that survey. I was disgusted. Turns out he would use this survey as a tactic and try to approach female teenagers and take photos with them and harass them with texts later. I was shocked as well. My school was in a reputable neighborhood, and we all assumed that there wouldn't be such creeps, but goodness were we all wrong. I was glad he was caught by the police. To the photo-taking creep, let's not meet again. But I did. After he was arrested, I graduated and started schooling in a tertiary institution in 2017. It's about an hour's drive away from where my secondary school was, and I also moved to the school dormitories nearby. As I was walking home one day, I caught sight of him lurking at a bus stop nearby. Oh boy, I could never forget his face. He looked even more creepy carrying a black bag, holding some papers that looked eerily like survey forms while holding a very old camera phone. How did I ever miss that camera phone when I encountered him last time? I was very scared. How could he be here? Wasn't he arrested last year? Wasn't he stalking me the whole time? I was almost crying and quickly called a friend and walked past him. Once he was out of sight, I ran home while on the phone. I was telling all of my schoolmates to be careful, and soon enough the school was informed. The discipline master and a few PE teachers went to apprehend the stalker, and sometime later dragged him into the school office and contacted authorities. I was informed that he was released last year because of insufficient evidence. Apparently in the place where I lived, taking photos of girls/women was not a crime. They searched his flat, and there wasn't anything incriminating other than a creepy ton of photos of female students. After this incident, he disappeared, only to be stalking other girls in another school. How I wished we would never meet again, but I still saw him roaming near my school dorm every now and then, trying to be discreet with his little camera phone. I'm moving to university soon, and would be pretty far away from him. However, I'm not sure if I will ever be free of this stalker. All that I know is that I never want him to meet again. Also, as a final note, I went to check the news and he did get arrested. The news was dated March 2019, because they'd gotten new reports in 2017. So yeah, the 1.5 year processing time is just super long, but I'm glad now there will be justice for this creep. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's stories. If you did, don't forget to let me know by dropping a like and leaving a comment. That always really helps me out. Something else that you can do is send me your stories via email or share them to my Reddit page. All the info can be found in the description. As I mentioned yesterday, it would really mean a lot to me if you would check out my friend Briefcase. He is so close to hitting the 100k goal and is an awesome creator. I'm going to link one of his videos here on screen soon and in the description because he really is worth your time. So please, please, please check him out. But with that being said, I'm going to leave you here. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.